Have Juan Felipe Zuleta, who is a director of Unidentified Objects. So this is a movie that we recently got the chance to check out, and I just want to say I love the representation in this movie, as well as the comedy and the tears that it brought to me as well watching this. So really good movie you made here.
Appreciate it, Luis.
So I want to start off by just you letting us know a little bit more about yourself and the film as well.
Cool. Yeah, I'm a filmmaker from Medellin, Colombia, born and raised. I moved to the U.S. in 2012, and I work as a filmmaker. This is my first feature film. Um, Unidentified Objects is a movie about and for outsiders, of people who don't precisely necessarily belong in a circle or can fit into a specific community easily. And both characters, Matthew, which is a homosexual dwarf, a little person, and Sarah Hay, she plays Winona, who's a sex worker. They both are characters who have historically have been like pushed away by society and looked down upon. And I thought it would be interesting to just make a story around to these oddballs and people and just really dive into their psyche and their perspective in the world and put them in a strange, interesting circumstances where we also get to know them and understand them better. And unidentified objects, precisely the name. It obviously alludes to aliens, because the movie has a little bit of a sci-fi adjacent angle to it. They're going to the north of Canada to find what's supposed to be an alien abduction that is happening in 3 days time, but also because they are literally unidentified objects, and they are unidentified in the sense of that they don't fit in, or they are not easily, you cannot place them in a specific circle.
Yeah, I really like that aspect of it, that there's this sci-fi whole thing going on, but deep down it was all about the humanity in both of them. And I do like what they're both different, but deep down they were like, I felt from watching the movie, this loneliness in both of them. And I like seeing that progress with each other as the movie goes on.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Yeah. So I want to know also, as a filmmaker, what would you say is like some of your biggest influences when it comes to your own work? What influenced you the most growing up, or even now today as well?
That's a lot. I would still say I'm in the process of exploring my taste as a filmmaker. If I unidentified objects, for me, in some ways, I stole. There's a few road trip movies that I love, like Y Tu Mamá También or Little Miss Sunshine.
Yeah.
Because as you say, you get to explore like a literal journey, but within that literal journey, there's like the growth of the characters, and there's also like that aspect of them like coming to terms with themselves. Just mentioning those two movies, I think Alfonso Cuarón particularly is a massive influence. But Unidentified Objects, I can say it has some surreal and sci-fi elements. So I think some of the ambiguity and stuff like that comes from influences a little bit of the Coen brothers, a little bit of Denis Villeneuve, the way he's able to tell stories without necessarily like just showing you like enough, allowing your imagination to do the work. But also, I would say it's a Lynchian. It's a little bit of influence by David Lynch as well, especially like Twin Peaks or Blue Velvet. He's more like grounded work, where you can create extraordinary characters and like create like an elevated reality, that it almost feels like a dreamscape, but still make it grounded and human. So I think I just mentioned a few filmmakers, but I think for this movie in particular, I would say Cuarón, especially with like the long takes and like making it feel real and like almost like Alfonso Cuarón didn't design Y Tu Mamá También that much. He barely did any like color palette or anything. It was very, very grounded. So my movie, Unidentified Objects, I think has some of that element from that, but also since in many ways we're inside the characters' heads throughout the story, and there's many reasons, and like there, when you watch the movie, there's like layers of of like reality per se that you could discuss, we could discuss in more detail. That combining those two elements was what I was fascinated about or interested on exploring from a cinematic standpoint, from a storytelling standpoint.
Yeah, I really did like that aspect of the film where you're in different states, and I like that the movie doesn't like sort of like tell you we're about to enter a dream state or a real state, and it's just like all weaved together. It definitely gets you more into the heads of these characters and what they're dealing with. And the thing what you mentioned with Tu Mamá También, I really do like this film as well, how you start off with these two characters, and by the end of it, they're like completely different people, especially once they like really get to talk with each other, which I thought was really good, the chemistry between both of the actors. And
Thank you.
I really did enjoy that. So my next question would be, how was the process of filming this movie? I know when I'm not sure when you filmed this movie, but I know with the pandemic, a lot of things changed and all of that. So did that have any impact on the story you wanted to tell, or did this movie come out of the pandemic itself?
It came out of the pandemic. In some ways, I say that the main characters of our movie are both helpless souls that are like that are lonely and they're in search of something. They don't know what that is, and that's kind of what brings them to this journey. And two, they live in liminal spaces, meaning they don't belong here or there, as I said before. Like and that's why the movie and when the COVID hit, I was in New York City. I live in New York. I found myself unemployed. I found myself like hitting like as many people in the world, hitting like rock bottom and not finding, and my writing partner and I were both like in a similar position. So we both decided to just go and write this script. And this was like our response to that grief and to that like frustration with the world, and then eventually it almost happened as a miracle after miracle. So I said, like, when you make a feature film, especially a first movie, I actually, I don't know second movies or third movies. I know I can speak from my own experience, but when you make a feature film, you do need the stars to align. You need to like put all the work and effort, but you need the stars to align. And in many ways, I feel this movie brought that to us. So once we wrote the screenplay, the first draft of the screenplay in a matter of weeks, like 3 or 4 weeks, we had already like a screenplay, and then we kept rewriting it. But then once we had the screenplay, I built a visual treatment, and this is what, and I already knew the language of the movie. It all came to me like very, very quickly, and that never happens. And then I just started diving in, and all of a sudden I started like raising money. And I started hitting up investors and then started saying, like, this is how much it's going to cost us. And then all of a sudden, when we had this first monies, then money becomes a little bit of a magnet. And we didn't have the entire budget when we started filming. We only had enough for production. And even then, we still went a little bit over budget during production. But we still went for it. And when I say stars align, we started shooting the movie. We did some pickups early 2021, and we finished the movie like later 2021. But we started shooting the movie in August 2020. And that's when we went and started making it. And it was one of the first productions to get greenlit by SAG-AFTRA in the East Coast of the United States. As you remember at the time, everything that had to do with travel was an incredible complex protocol. So flying my actress, Sarah Hay, who plays Winona, from LA, she had to do a week of quarantine. And then we started filming in Maine. All of that, it all happened like, and we had so little resources that if anything went wrong, we would have to shut down the movie, and who knows when we would be finishing it. But I think the stars aligned in a really nice way. We ended up getting a grant from Panavision. So the movie we shot with Anamorphic Lenses because I wanted to combine that realism kind of aspect of like long takes, like one-ers of not realism, but like that cinematic vibe, but with like the Anamorphic Lenses elevated and make it feel like a dream. So I think a lot of that was it. We were able to flush out in a matter of months, and we were just incredibly blessed. The way people started, like we started, and a lot of the crew are friends, and they weren't working because production was shut down. So they like the way the movie is structured is like part of the crew members have a little bit of equity. We did pay them for the work, but they were like, yeah, I want to go. That there's nothing more than I want to go to the middle of nowhere in Maine, leave the city and shoot a feature film. So that's kind of like I think, and that created an energy around the film that everybody wanted to do their best, and we were like a family making it, and we were all working together, and it was a very collaborative process. And I think the best movies usually have that, where you with the creative teams are not only are very talented people, but generally they care and they build like a really good collaboration.
Yeah, I really do think y'all did build a big world, and you tell me the story of the crew and everything, how it was done. I think definitely that, like they say, diamonds get built in the rough. So I really see this in this film for sure. So I really did like that. My next question is, these two characters being very distinct, was there like things that you pulled from like your real life or people you know like that inspired these characters, or how did these characters come to life?
So it's interesting because I studied, obviously I went or not obviously, but I went to film school, and you study a little bit of representation in cinema. You study about like how movies have changed through the years, and I had always been fascinated, and I had actually these on my notes about little people actors in cinema, because obviously we're working about towards all sorts of rights, LGBTQ rights and equality, and Black, and even like Latinx now is a big push, and all of this. But like little people in cinema have been treated and misrepresented and like represented in like crazy ways, almost like they usually play freaks. They usually play like the typical freak show character, etc. And not like some filmmakers treat that with like that most respect. But I just found that character fascinating and what it represents behind it with the times where we're talking about representation. So that alone was something that I was curious and interested on. And then like naturally, like just unidentified objects is a character piece. So it's like it just became an obsession exploring that character, and that character being incredibly smart, nothing like what you would imagine it to be, and being incredibly self-aware that he's a little person, that he's a gay little person, so that wasn't necessarily building from my own experience, but it was out of curiosity and about learning about that. And then from my own experience, I think a lot of, in some ways, both characters have a little bit of me. What like the Winona is in some ways like very impulsive, very like go-getter. She doesn't stop at anything, and like I think that spirit I could relate very much, and I think we built the character like I could like find that thread. Like she doesn't stop at anything. She crosses the border illegally if it needs to be, and I think that's a lot of the like Latinos coming to the United States that are like their hustle and like stuff. She has a little bit of that energy in it, and then. Matthew, on the other hand, like I think being unemployed, let's say I stopped working at the job where I was working in November because and then COVID hit, and November 2019, and then COVID hit, and then I was like struggling financially, and I think a lot of that frustration comes from Matthew's character, and also like I lost my uncle, a really uncle that was very close to me not too long ago, and also like that, like the grief. Because he goes on this trip also for a friend of his, like just as a promise that he had to her, a friend of his who passed away. So a lot of those elements were very relatable, and I could like kind of like really find a place inside of me that I could understand the emotion very well of how the character was feeling, and yeah, the rest I think is very much fictional and just taste for finding a great character. But I gotta say, Matthew Jeffers. It was one of the first persons, our little person actor. He was one of our first collaborators. When we knew we were gonna make this story, we brought him in. We found him, and he added a lot of his own personal experience and to the script. So we rewrote some of the stuff with him. We kept elevating. We made him very, very much part of the process. He's also a producer in the movie.
Yeah, definitely. Matthew and Sarah both did an amazing job, and seeing somebody like Matthew take the center stage in the movie was something that you really don't see a lot, and that is really good that you had that a thought to put somebody there, and I think he really did an amazing job. So I hope to see more of him as well, more of that representation as well.
Thank you, Luis. Yeah, me too. He's incredible. I hope I'm pretty sure he's gonna get a lot of jobs, hopefully, in the near. And he's already working a lot. He's in New Amsterdam in Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I guess my final question will be, with the ending of the movie and just the movie in general, what is the message that you want audiences to take, or what do you want them to feel by the end of it?
That's a good question. I feel like that's a question that I often I don't necessarily like to be didactic, even though the story does have like an ending that in some ways it's the ending is ambiguous. Like we don't know, like it is very ambiguous. Like people can make their own interpretations of what happens at the end. But I think, yeah, I don't know. I feel like the message is very much like, I mean, the movies is exploring in some ways also like the place by Anton Chekhov, like the Matthew is a scholar, and is taking some of that in mind, and Chekhov characters are usually people who have incredibly tragic lives, and they can change that by just maybe changing attitudes, or maybe by just doing something about them, but they don't. So in some ways, I feel like the takeaway in the movie is like, maybe perhaps no matter yeah, I don't know. It's hard to like come up with like a specific takeaway, because there's a lot. The movie is very packed, and I think everything is there. But I wonder what your takeaway is. What did you get out of it when you finish it? What is the thing that makes you feel like is the main takeaway?
Yeah, I definitely do agree that the way you set up the ending, it is definitely up to everybody's interpretation of what they took away at the end. For me, definitely it was about change and self-reflection. That's what I took away from it, especially thinking about just maybe sometimes taking that risk or really finding out who you are. So that definitely was for me what I got from it. And I could definitely see other people having different interpretations. That's why I do like the way you set up the ending as well.
Yeah, I think what you said, that's absolutely what the film is about. And in some ways it's kind of like, yeah, just we all spend so much part of our lives asleep, and not everybody, but most people do, and not realizing that they could wake up and take that road trip to the alien abduction, and in that process find a little bit more of who they are and who they want to be. And I feel that kind of at the end of the day, like that's why in some ways the character in my film, it feels almost like he's in a dream state, because he's having these daydreams. He's kind of like tripping in some ways, and not realizing that he's in a process of waking up. And when you're awake, then you're like inhabiting the world in a completely different way. And that's kind of like, I think, as you said, for me, like one of the main takeaways.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to thank you so much for this. Gave us a lot of insight into the movie as well. Unidentified Objects will be playing at Fantastic Fest next, if anybody is interested as well. And just anywhere where we can find you online to keep following you on your journey as a filmmaker.
Yes, you can follow me on Instagram at Juan F. Zuleta Juan F. Zuleta. That's my Instagram, and then that's also my Twitter. But also you can follow the movie on Unidentified Objects Film on Instagram as well, where we are posting updates and everything there.
Okay, well, thank you so much for this, and best of luck on everything, and thank you.
Appreciate it, Luis. Take care.
Thank you.
Have a good one.